Most Americans know the names Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy. Their crimes have been splashed across documentaries, podcasts, and movies for decades. But what if I told you that one of the deadliest, most prolific killers in American history has slipped through the cracks of mainstream recognition? That his story is so chilling, so haunting, and so unsettling that it's almost unbelievable he isn't a household name. This is the story of Samuel Little, the man the FBI has quietly confirmed as America's most prolific serial killer, with an estimated 93 victims. And yet, hardly anyone knows his name. Samuel Little was born in 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia. His childhood was turbulent, raised mostly by his grandmother, drifting from one troubled home to another. Early signs of violence were already there. By high school, he was arrested for burglary, then skipped town. What followed was decades of drifting across the country, stealing, hustling, and eventually killing. But unlike most infamous killers, Little didn't have a signature calling card that made him easy to trace. He didn't leave gruesome scenes that shocked the press. His victims were women on the margins of society. Sex workers, drug users, women struggling with poverty and addiction. Women who, tragically, were less likely to be missed by police or the media. For over 35 years, Samuel Little traveled from state to state: Florida, Texas, Ohio, California, Kentucky, Louisiana, leaving a trail of death behind him. But here's the chilling part. These murders went largely unnoticed. Many were ruled overdoses, others accidental. Some were dismissed as unsolved assaults. Police departments across the country never thought to connect the dots. Why? Because Little understood something terrifying. Society doesn't look too hard when certain women vanish. And he used that blind spot as his camouflage. Little's method was both simple and horrifying. He strangled his victims, sometimes with his bare hands, sometimes using ropes or belts. He once told investigators, "I never shot anybody, never stabbed anybody." He didn't have to. His grip was enough. He enjoyed watching the life leave their bodies. He said he loved the look in their eyes. But what made him harder to catch was how he disposed of the bodies. Many were left in alleyways, abandoned lots, or the edges of highways. Some were never found at all. To investigators, each case seemed isolated, a tragic accident, not a murder. Samuel Little was arrested dozens of times in his life. Theft, assault, drug possession, you name it. But every time, he slipped away from long prison sentences. When DNA technology finally caught up in the 1980s and 90s, his earlier crimes had already faded into cold case files. In fact, police had his DNA linked to at least 3 murders by 2012. But even then, they didn't realize the scale of what they were dealing with. It wasn't until 2012, when Little was living in a homeless shelter in Kentucky, that the house of cards began to collapse. He was arrested on a drug charge and extradited to California. There, investigators ran his DNA, and suddenly cold cases from the 1980s lit up. 3 women, all strangled, all found in Los Angeles. He was convicted in 2014. For most criminals, that would be the end of the story. Life in prison, forgotten. But with Samuel Little, it was only the beginning. Behind bars, Samuel Little began to talk. Slowly at first, then with chilling detail. He started confessing to murders all across the country. Not just a handful, not just a dozen. 93. The FBI at first thought it was exaggeration. After all, many killers inflate their numbers for infamy. But then Little began to draw. Literally. He sketched dozens of portraits of his victims from memory. Faces of women he had strangled, sometimes decades earlier, with haunting accuracy. And then, case by case, his confessions started matching unsolved murders from around the country. Police officers who had long since retired suddenly saw the faces of their victims come to life again in Little's colored pencil drawings. Here's the question. Why don't we know Samuel Little's name the way we know Bundy's? Why aren't there endless documentaries and books about him? The answer is complicated and tragic. His victims weren't the all-American college co-eds that grabbed headlines in the 70s and 80s. They were women on the margins, poor, black, brown, addicted, forgotten. The truth is, America didn't pay attention. Their disappearances weren't front-page news. And because of that, neither was his story. Little told investigators he chose strangulation because it gave him the ultimate control. He claimed he could tell the exact moment a woman's soul left her body. What's terrifying is that he spoke with no remorse, no shame, no guilt. In fact, he often smiled, even chuckled, as he described the killings. For him, it was entertainment. For his victims, it was the end of everything. By 2018, the FBI had verified over 60 of his confessions, making Samuel Little the deadliest known serial killer in U.S. history. The number could still be higher. Some cases remain unconfirmed, others unsolved, and some victims may never be identified. The FBI even created a dedicated webpage showing his hand-drawn portraits of victims, hoping the public could help put names to faces. Families who had wondered for decades what happened to their daughters, sisters, or mothers suddenly had answers. Samuel Little died in December 2020 at the age of 80, serving multiple life sentences in a California prison. He never faced trial for most of his alleged murders, but his death raised another unsettling truth. How many more Samuel Littles are out there? Men whose crimes slip beneath the cracks because their victims aren't deemed important enough for national attention? Samuel Little's case forces us to confront a painful reality about how society values life. Bundy and Dahmer became infamous because their victims fit a narrative the media wanted to sell. Little, who killed nearly 3 times as many people, remains largely unknown. The women he murdered deserve to be remembered. Their stories deserve to be told. Because in the end, the measure of a society isn't in how it punishes its monsters, but in how it remembers its forgotten. This was the story of Samuel Little, the deadliest serial killer in American history, and yet the one you've probably never heard of. Subscribe for more mind-blowing discoveries like this.